Mosley rose to notoriety. No, no, not good. Hi, my name is Colin, and I've made this video to talk about different themes in 6 Easy Pieces by Walter Mosley. I wanted to put together a video discussing the intersectionality between the character Ezekiel Easy Rawlins and Mosley's commentary on themes such as race, masculinity, power, and how they connect. I fell in love with the story Smoke and wanted to explore an area that hasn't been all that touched on by many other scholars, so let's get started. But one question I had was, what about masculinity? Throughout Smoke, I found many themes that challenge the masculine and rugged themes that are found in the hard-boiled genre. In novels like The Maltese Falcon, Sam Spade-like characters are often looking out for themselves, beating up the bad guys, and yet they're not really good guys themselves. Yet with Easy, he has a family to look out for and a community he feels strongly enough to protect. So what does Mosley think about masculinity? And why is Easy characterized so differently from the hard-boiled detectives? So very briefly, to understand what the hard-boiled genre is, it's typically a subgenre of crime fiction where the detective must experience the corruptions within crime and the legal system, usually in urban areas, and there's a lot of moral ambiguity, lies, deceit that often follows the genre and follows the detective, and they have to navigate these undesirable qualities to solve the case or save their hide. So with characters like Sam Spade, he thrives on outsmarting his enemies and throwing around punches to show them who's boss. And he charms the pants off of every female that he encounters. And it just showcases these very hyperbolized ideas of what it means to be a man. You must be stronger, smarter, sexier than all the other men to be the detective. So in the case of Easy Rawlins, he needs to technically demonstrate these same tropes to be the hard-boiled detective that we understand, but he doesn't really do this. So for some context, Easy is found in a Los Angeles setting during the 1940s and 1960s, during an era of the civil rights movement, and African Americans are being more and more recognized for their services and achievements. However, there also is a lot of strife and challenge that is found because there are general ideas that the status quo shouldn't be changing. So race was a huge topic during this era, and Mosley created the character of Easy Rawlins to illustrate the challenges of being an African American man in the mid-1900s. So I wanted to talk about some different ideas of why Easy's character challenges the idea of masculinity, especially when it's connected to race, and the ideas of black masculinity and things like that. So one thing I wanted to talk about was his connection to family. So as we really get into it, there's one thing that I mostly noticed and found most interesting when reading a lot of the text is that Easy had, unlike other hard-boiled detectives, he has a really strong connection to his family. I feel that I gravitated to Easy's character because he's not alone, and his motivations are not purely of his own benefit or survival, which is a lot more natural versus this idea that every human is greedy. So dotted throughout the series, Easy makes references to his own family, and African American culture that builds on the community that he is involved in. In accordance to tropes of hard-boiled, this is typically unusual. Characters like Sherlock Holmes and Sam Spade don't have families that they're really dedicated to. And in an academic journal from Jeffrey Berry, he compares Easy with another well-known black detective in literature, Chandler's Philip Marlowe character. He says, quote, "Easy Rawlins' place in the African-American subculture of Los Angeles gives him some significant advantages over Marlowe. Rawlins can be as independent and strong as Marlowe, but he is never as alone as Marlowe. Rawlins has places where he feels at home, people to talk to, music to listen to, and friends. Most of all of these connections come from Rawlins' relationship to African American culture." So this commentary confirms that this Easy Rawlins formula goes against the idea of the detective that he must ultimately be alone. And if you think about it, it makes sense. I mean, we as humans are social creatures, and it's our innate desire to have a connection to people and develop families and be grounded in community, no matter if you're an introverted or extroverted person. In Smoke, Easy consistently makes references to his family as they pervade his thoughts, and Easy has a moment of desperately wanting to be with his family. Within the text, he says, quote, "Maybe if Bonnie wasn't off being a stewardess in Africa and Europe, things would have been different. If she were home, I'd be too, home with my Mexican son and my mixed-race daughter, home with my Caribbean common law wife," end quote. Mosley creates a new formula for the hard-boiled detective, a detective with a family and a desire to be with that family, and a love for his children that we don't necessarily see in the more classical examples of hard-boiled literature. Another thing to note is that race is easily expressed when Mosley's talking about his family and how all the members of his family, and that there's a great diversity in the colors and the race that Easy mentions, but it is his family, and that's ultimately who he wants to protect. Another thing I wanted to discuss was Easy's treatment of women, as well as his domestic role as a man within the stories of 6 Easy Pieces by Walter Mosley. So beyond his life as a father to Feather and Jesus, Easy is a husband, and with that holds responsibility as a patriarch of the home. Bonnie Shea is a stewardess, so she travels often, and throughout the novel you see her on voyages away from home and shifting away from traditional domestic values that women are expected to play. Instead, Easy takes on the role of raising his adopted children, often alone, while Bonnie is away. Easy demonstrates the want and desire for his wife to be with him, just in his dialogue between him and his daughter, Feather. The quote is, "She was happy to spend time with me, and it was a joy in my heart to talk to her," end quote. So with a lot of the conversations that he's having, he talks a lot about how much he misses Bonnie with his daughter, and it just displays this vulnerability and gentleness that you often don't see with other hard-boiled characters. And for other female characters throughout the book, he does the same thing. There's a moment with an older woman that he encounters, and her vision is heavily impaired, and she believes that Easy is her white grandson. And Easy plays along so that the woman feels a warmth from her grandson that she hasn't felt in a long time. She reached out a hand and I took it. She leaned forward and I accepted the kiss on my cheek. I kissed her gray head and stood up. "I'll come a little later, Granny," I said. Then I walked off to meet with a gangster, end quote. Easy demonstrates a softness for several female characters throughout the novel that challenge the hard-boiled trope of the domestic. So I hope you all enjoyed and got to learn a little bit more about Walter Mosley and Easy Rawlins' character, and kind of see it in a different perspective than what has been mostly talked about. I hope you all enjoyed, and thanks for watching.